Buddhism emerged in India based on the teachings of Siddhartha Gautama approximately 2,500 years ago. I typically read my students the book called The Prince Who Ran Away. It's a children's book. It helps them understand the basics of the story of how Buddhism began. On a night more than 2,000 years ago, a prince was born in India. He would have been the most powerful Raja, or king, in all the world. When he was born, the wisest Brahmin in the land predicted that if the baby ever left the palace, all the suffering he sees in the world would make him suffer, and he would be too compassionate to bear it. So his dad does what any powerful rich dad does. He shelters his child and vows that he can never leave the palace. Permanent house arrest. But eventually that plan fell apart. You see, his dad allows him to go to a new park that he built. Side note, remember kings show they are powerful by building big stuff? This is a case in point. So while he rides to this new park, he sees an old man, a sick person, and a funeral procession, and he experienced the reality of suffering for the first time. He just couldn't get away from it. It was everywhere once he realized, so it was his new mission in life to find a way to end suffering. And so this led Siddhartha to the great Bodhi tree, where, while meditating, he found enlightenment and achieved nirvana, the peace that triumphs over suffering. All these realities he found within himself and in his mind, not through a god or a deity. He then became known as the Buddha and taught his way to end suffering to all those who wished to learn. So while this is a children's book that tells the story, it does capture the historical story and the beliefs of Buddhism. In regards to gods and deities, traditional Buddhism is rather atheistic. It doesn't focus on the need for a god, but rather revolves around people finding truth within them. Let's break down some major beliefs about Buddhism. Again, more vocab for you to know, so get ready. As we saw in the story of the Buddha, the main ideas can be summed up by the Four Noble Truths. Basically, all life is suffering. I think most people would understand that life is suffering, but the tricky part for everyone is that all life is suffering. The second noble truth, suffering is caused from desire. The reason that you suffer is because you desire something, and you can't or don't get it. In high school, I think of wanting to be way better at basketball than I was, and I suffered because I sat on the bench, and I desired to be better than I was. Number 3, one can be freed from desire. While I may be making this too simple, I can't get over the suffering because basically I was desiring basketball skills that I did not have, so I should stop desiring them. So how do you do that? How does one merely stop desiring? Noble Truth 4. One is freed from desire by following the Eightfold Path. Now, the Eightfold Path includes things like right understanding and right thought, right speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. You don't need to write all those down, but just know that the Eightfold Path focuses on ethical living, mental discipline, and wisdom. It's not really a checklist to follow in order, but summarizes the how to overcome the desire, and in the end, you will overcome suffering. The goal of Buddhism is to achieve enlightenment, which is known as nirvana. Similar to Hindus, Buddhists believe in rebirth. They prefer the word rebirth compared to reincarnation. It's important to know that Buddhists don't deny that gods exist, but they just don't think they are important. The Buddha never wanted to be seen as a god either, but as time went on, some branches of Buddhism considered him a deity. Theravada Buddhism is the traditional teachings of Buddhism that we've been discussing this whole time. Mahayana Buddhism sees the Buddha as a deity and also believes in bodhisattvas, who are these enlightened individuals who try to help other people achieve enlightenment. While meditation can occur anywhere, many Buddhist monks worship in temples or pagodas. The Buddhist holy teachings contain the sutras, which are the words and the teachings of the Buddha. While Buddhism started in the Indian subcontinent, it actually is practiced more in other places besides India. It will spread to China and Tibet. It will also spread to Japan and Korea and other places in Southeast Asia. You will see Mahayana Buddhism include other branches that you've heard of, like Zen Buddhism or Pure Land Buddhism. It first spread within India due to a Mauryan emperor known as Ashoka, who constructed pillars and walls with his edicts on them. And they focused on many things, but one of them was the promotion of these Buddhist thoughts. Missionaries and merchants further spread the beliefs along the Silk Road, which led it to then China, Japan, and Korea, where they found state support at different times in history. Buddhism is a universal religion, so it accepts converts and allows anyone to join. Buddhism was a more simplified and accessible version of Hinduism, so it really was attractive to lower caste people and women within India and elsewhere. And in regards to women, Buddhism allowed women to join the monastic community as nuns, along with allowing more equal social roles. The Buddha taught wives to be obedient to their husbands, but he also taught for his husbands to be respectful to their wives. Well, there is a whole lot more we could dig into. I hope that just scratches the surface and gives you some basic understanding. Thanks for tuning in. If you find this information helpful, give us a like or subscribe below, and check out the other videos in this series about world religions.